What is art?
Art is
history.
What is art? That's a good question.
This is Art Uncovered.
Art is our collective cultural history.
A weekly podcast that brings you interviews with an eclectic mix of artists and creators.
Art is
disappointing your parents.
I'm your host, Kimberly. Hello all, thanks for tuning in. My guest this week is Matt Hulse, who's an old friend of the show. I actually interviewed Matt back in 2018. I'll be sure to include a link to that episode at our website at artuncoveredpodcast.com. This time, though, we're going to talk about Matt's new film, Sound for the Future, which will premiere at the London Film Festival this October. Throughout the conversation, we also talk about his award-winning photo series and his collaboration with a pen pal. Stay with us. Matt, welcome. It's great to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back. We're all still here, surprisingly.
We are, thankfully. So you've been busy, super busy. In a couple of months, you're going to be premiering a feature-length film titled Sound for the Future. Is this your first feature-length film?
No, it's my third, believe it or not. But most people would think of it as my second because Dummy Jim, which I think we spoke about before, had the most sort of public impact, I suppose. But I'd made a feature before that called Follow the Master, which was very, very low budget, but was, it was 75 minutes long, so it was feature-length documentary. So yes, technically this is my third, but it's another combination of documentary, fiction, animation. There's all sorts going on in there.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about the content? Because I just said to you off air that I kind of remember this story from some of the work that we spoke about 2 years ago, and that story being the start of a band that you created with your siblings back in, was it the 80s?
Yeah, okay, so the sort of core of the story, I mean, the film itself is sprouted and so many kaleidoscopic ways that the kind of original anchor is it's still there, but it's quite remote. And the original anchor is that I was in a band with my brother and sister, pre-teen post-punk band called the Hippies. This is sort of 1979, early 80s. I was notionally the drummer, but it was, cardboard boxes and chopsticks and pots and pans. And my brother, my elder brother, was the lyricist, and he had the kind of most professional idea about how the band should be. And so my sister Polly, we had a little Bontempi wind organ thing, these little like kids keyboards that you press the button.
Oh yeah.
It's like really feeble battery powered thing. And we did, we put out an album, or probably more correctly a cassette EP, called A Sound for the Future, and it had 5 songs on it, four with lyrics, 1 instrumental. The songs were about quite eccentric things. One was about rabies. Rabies is a killer. As you ought to know, rabies is a killer. Horrible way to go. Another one was about the assassination of your guy JFK.
Dallas City Ghost.
That has the amazing line, "Oh Lee Harvey Oswald, Dallas City Ghost, where the hell are you when we need you most?" May or may not be pertinent. Then what else? Toby wrote this amazing song called Terra Nova, which I don't know. I need to ask him more about it. I don't know where it came from, this 12-year-old who's singing "Love has turned to hate again, the sunny days when rain never came are over once more time. The simple sticks have turned to bombs, the world is now a shell taken from. Will God still be pleased with his infernal creation?" 12-year-old comes up with that.
Yeah, so he wrote those lyrics?
He wrote those lyrics, and the way he performs them is a bit like Ian Curtis from Joy Division. So you have this very strange thing with this child's voice in this kind of really dark setting, and then I don't know why, but me and my mum and Polly are doing a kind of mantra in the background. So the keyboard's doing this little loop, and then we're going,
which is gibberish. It's not a glitch in the mic, listeners.
I mean, we all thought that we're possessed.
Round upon a tree, we now shoot while seeking missiles.
Anyway, so that was the kind of what we were up to as kids. But the another important part of the story is that our parents had separated a couple of years before this, and we were eventually living with my dad Tim and my stepmother Tricia in a town called Reading, and then we would go to visit my mum in the holidays in Cambridge, and she was living a kind of quite bohemian way at that point. She had lots of really interesting friends, some students, some cross-dressing going on. There was definitely LGBTQ folk around. There was drugs and drinks, and it was this kind of bohemian situation.
Was that vastly different than your father's home?
Yeah, it was. So it was almost kind of bipolar in as much as it's like Reading represented school, the little British school uniforms, all of this order and relative order. And then Cambridge was like, hey man, I was encountering Smiths quite young and getting into drumming. I thought it was brilliant. I loved it all. My brother was quite freaked out by it and probably doesn't remember much of it. But that was what the band grew out of. Basically, my mum saying, stop sitting around, do something creative, start a band.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously some kids would have been told to go and play soccer or do scoring. My mum go-to was start a band for some reason. And we went, okay, mother.
How long did the hippies last?
Not very long. I think we probably lasted about... It's none of us can remember exactly. I reckon 6 months or something, and we did 2 concerts in my mum's living room with her friends.
So adorable.
But honestly, that experience set me off on the road to being an artist, because I remember talking to my mum once and saying, I want to sort of get that point in school where you start thinking about college and university, and the adults asking you what you want to do, and I just want to kind of do what I want to do. My mum said, well, have you thought of art college? Because most of the bands that you like went to art college. Cool. Okay, I'll go to art college so I can be in a band, basically. Which happened. And yeah, so it was a really formative period.
And that's the basis of your new feature-length film?
That's right. Yeah, it would be inaccurate to say that in a way the film is about the band. I would say what it's about is this filmmaker, i.e. me, Matt Hulse's attempt to understand his family and his family at a certain point in time, and to kind of extrapolate what happened 40 plus years ago through lots and lots of different methods and attempts to understand the past. So there's song, I do it through song. I work with groups of kids who are improvising, recreating the band. I work with 3 kids who actually started their own band, a new band called Generation Riot. So I was like their mentor.
Cool.
So they were kind of embodying partly my experience from back then in a sort of roundabout way.
What was it like for you to watch that?
Well, it was amazing, but I was also really involved in it. So I was being watched because I'm in the film a lot. It's a study of, I just sort of surrendered myself to the process of, I want to embody this story rather than write a screenplay about it and remove myself from it. I want to kind of be it. And that's all discussed within the film as well. So it's a sort of film also about the process of making and biography and autobiography. And a good friend of mine, Gareth Evans, who's the film curator at Whitechapel Gallery here in London, I asked him to write a few hundred words about the film so I could understand what the hell I'd made. And he came back with a 4,000-word essay.
Wow. Do you think, was it accurate, you think?
Well, it's interesting because what he did, he as a piece of writing, it's like a reflection of the film. So it jumps around all the time. It takes loads of different attempts to get to the core of the subject, but just never really gets there. He was doing a sort of a bit like a piece of writing that was dancing with the film in some way. But he came out with this strapline, which I thought was really good, which was based on an American, not a US novel actually, which is you can't go back home again, but you can try. And that, he said, I think that sums it up. And I thought, yes, I mean, there's various ways you could sum it up, but that really sums up the heart of it, which is that there's this filmmaker, artist in his early 50s. He's looking back on his life. He's trying to understand what the impact of this situation was with the band and the divorce and the UK at the end of the 70s with Margaret Thatcher just coming in. There was like a lot of social rioting and so on. Music was really amazing around that time. So yes, it's my kind of exploration of all that.
Do you think you learned anything about your own past from the process?
Yeah, more than I bargained for. And one of the weirdest things, Kimberly, was my brother refused to participate in it. Oh. So I had to make a film without being able to refer to him or show him, or in the end he agreed to one picture, which is the three of us that my mum took. But what was really interesting about that was from my perspective, back in 1979, he split up the hippies by saying, I don't want to do this anymore, it's silly or whatever, because he was an adolescent and he didn't want to hang out with his younger brother and sister. Yes, too cool for it. And that really, really wound me up at the time. I remember I really went into a rage about it. But what I ended up doing was like taking the lead. And so me and my sister Polly carried on for a bit. This sort of, it's a bit like Tom Tom Club in relation to Talking Heads, you know. We lost our David Byrne, but we carried on and made our thing. And then eventually it was just me. I just carried on as a solo act with multiple tape recorders and got rid of the humans. And
are you still doing that?
Yeah, kind of. Not as much as I'd like. I don't think I'm a kind of temperamentally a natural musician. I'm a bit impatient, I think. But yes, I love music. Music's number one thing. So for me, yeah. I think the film is also a result of someone trying to make a film about a subject really close to them, where they're not allowed to refer to one of the key elements. Huh. You can imagine you have to go around all these creative houses to get around it, and that also shapes the film as this kind of absence of the brother.
How did you get around it? Like, what techniques did you use?
Well, for example, we worked with, when I say we, it's me and my ex, Vicky Mohideen, who's a brilliant youth theatre director, innovator. So she and I worked with a group of 18 young people from Glasgow, between the ages of 8 and 12, I suppose, 13 maybe. And we divided them into groups of 3. So basically we had 6 sets of the hippies to work with, and they all went through the same process of casting, which was all filmed, and then auditions, which was all film, and then
Interesting.
makeup, which was all filmed. So basically, all these these little groups of 3 kids were sort of produced into the same look, the same replicas of the hippies. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Was there, I assume there was differences even just among their energy.
Well, huge differences, but what's amazing, the power of the wig, because so they all, the same costumes were put on each set of kids, if you like.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And then because of the way the casting worked, we ended up with some situations where we had a girl playing my brother in one of the groups. Polly is played by this wonderful guy from Ghana, Emmanuel. So, he's this so Polly's pictures of Polly in that time, she's this sort of very sweet, freckly, white little girl with a bowl haircut. And then Emmanuel, he's there with this wig, and then he's black. And there's a brilliant scene where he's they're putting the wig on him, and he looks up at the makeup mirror, and there's a picture of Polly, and he goes, "How am I supposed to look like her? I'm not even the same color of skin." And they go, it's acting, we're just playing around. So there's all this stuff that happens, which is quite...
It sounds like, have you seen the Bob Dylan film where I think there's 8 or 9 different actors and actresses playing Bob Dylan?
Right, yes, with Kate Winslet, isn't it? Is one
No,
of them,
Kate Blanchett.
Oh, Kate Blanchett, yeah, that's right.
Kate Blanchett, and then there's an 8-year-old black kid who plays them, and...
Yeah,
very similar.
It's a bit like that. I thought it just amused me, this idea of sort of putting this blanket system onto all these different kids and just seeing what would come out of it.
Interesting.
And in the end, it's like a bit of a whirlwind, and you're confused. It's like, who are the real hippies? But the reason I chose that path was because it provides a kind of structure for working with young people with an improvisation without having to have a story as such. The kind of manipulation is we had to sustain this kind of white lie in a way, because I knew that there was never going to be, as it were, a real film with kids acting in a drama situation, a fiction situation. But that's what they all imagined, because they thought, we're going to audition for a film, so they all imagine Hollywood. But I knew all along I was never going to make a fiction. I was interested in the process of casting and makeup and hair, and almost like a social art experiment of a kind, and just to document art. And I just knew interesting things would happen, and they did.
And you also said that, or am I making this up, but did you say that there was a documentary component? I know in the excuse me, in the trailer that you sent me, there was a scene of, it looked like an older woman. I assumed your mom.
Yeah, my mum's in it. Her role is mostly a sort of reflective role. So she was, talking about the past and people that I remember as a child around that period.
So you were basically interviewing her. She wasn't performing.
Basically, she didn't do any performance as such, but
okay.
But she is naturally a bit of a performer, so it's a sort of fine. And she carries a very important scene actually, some way into the film, where when we initially went to film her, I said, if you have any paraphernalia or letters or photographs or anything you want to help prompt you with your interview. And she found the letter that my brother had written to her when he was 12 or 13, and it's this 2 sides of woe and grief. And she attempts to read this letter and then breaks down in tears halfway through.
Wow.
And that's kind of the real emotional heart of the film.
This is Art Uncovered. We'll be right back. Thanks again for tuning in, all. As you may have noticed, this podcast may sound a little different than it did about a month ago, and that is because I moved this podcast into my own name so that I can grow it in a way that benefits my guests, the conversations, and the listeners. So a lot is going to stay the same. This will still be a weekly interview-based podcast highlighting the work and practice of emerging artists, but some things have changed with this move. The big difference is how our episodes will be presented. So our podcast now has its own URL, artuncoveredpodcast.com. There I'm able to organize, group, and archive conversations based on theme. So basically I'm going to be creating playlists based on a theme so that you can listen to a stream of conversations all related to a certain idea. Those ideas will range from specified media to a common conceptual idea such as climate change, race and identity, family, etc. So you'll also notice on our website in the upper right hand corner a donate button. Since I'm running this podcast now on my own without the backing of a company, any donation will be graciously accepted. It will help ensure the continuation of this podcast, and it will also help fund special conversation episodes that will take the form of recorded panel discussions and live events. All that information and more is available on our website and also on our Instagram page at art_uncovered_podcast. Thanks for listening, thanks for following, and now back to the episode. Welcome back. Before the break, Matt Hulse and I were talking about his new film, Sound for the Future, which will premiere at the London Film Festival in October. And we'll return now by talking about his award-winning photo series. So, Matt, in preparing for this talk, you also sent me some photographs of yours. So is that series running parallel to your filmmaking work?
Yes, it is. And in fact, like many people, I constantly snapping and putting things on Instagram. And it so happened I had a period a few years ago. I was living in Southeast Asia, specifically Beijing, but I was working for a tour company called Koryo Tours who took international tourists into North Korea. So I was working for a while as a tour leader. So basically the guy at the front of the bus with the microphone that goes, and on your left, the tomb of Kim Jong-un or whatever. That's very getting ahead of myself there. He's still alive. But that role, and I did nine trips in total, which there's a whole other podcast about that. But while I was there, I was taking photographs with this cheap $9 telescopic lens that I found that you kind of strap onto your phone, and it has this very so not a very good quality lens, so it's got this sort of, the vignetting's really heavy and it flattens everything and it does strange things to the colours. And I was just basically taking snaps but using this particular setup. And it came out like really, really interestingly.
Yeah, they look almost like pinhole cameras or...
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of eerie thing. And then one day I was on the Facebook and an advert popped up saying, submit your photos to the Felix Schuller Photo Award, free entry. And I noticed that it was Felix Schuller Photo Award was based in Osnabrück in Germany, and I know Osnabrück a bit. So I thought, okay, Osnabrück. And without thinking, I just chose 5 of those telescopic pictures, called them Sniper, and months later had this call, hello, this is Peter from Germany. I was like, oh, who? From Felix Schuller. We are delighted to announce that you've been shortlisted for the category award, for the free open category award. So you have to come to Osnabrück. And then had to go and stand up there and pretend that I knew what I was doing all along.
Did people believe you?
Awkward situations in the bar afterwards with the photographers that weren't successful. To kind of, because I knew that I'd basically kind of, it was a lot of luck. Luck really on my side that day. But I did feel a bit bad about these people whose entire careers are that, and then this person comes along and just sort of fools around. But
But what are you supposed to do? I mean, not
I don't know. I did.
apply, you know?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I didn't think I had a chance. And as it happened, the mood the jury were in and the balance of the people in the jury was such that it was my moment with that set of pictures. It just hit something. But anyway, what I've done since is tried to take my photography more seriously. So I've set up a website, hulsephotography.com, and it's selling limited edition prints. And that's been up for a few months, not sold a thing. But my thinking was that the pictures carry some of the mood of social distancing and pandemic, because they're lone figures caught at a distance, sort of mostly with their backs turned to the camera, so you have this distancing experience.
Interesting. Did you submit this before the pandemic?
Yeah, this was in 2017.
Wow.
I think 2000 was it?
Wow, that's quite remarkable.
Yeah, so they've the pandemic's kind of swept over us, and then these pictures now have a new context. That's the way I saw it. But
yeah.
Great, time to sell. no luck yet, but I'm just leaving them out there because it's nice to have when people say, "Oh, you do photographs," I can, I've got somewhere to send.
Sure.
People, rather than look at my Instagram with its 80 million pictures.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So Matt, the last, I guess, aspect of your career that I would like to talk about is, I guess, returning full circle to music. And you sent me a couple of tracks that I believe you created with a pen pal.
That's right.
Which is the coolest thing ever. Before we get into the music, I want to hear about your pen pal story. Like, do you handwrite letters to someone?
Well, we operate in the electronic equivalent.
Okay.
So I got that award for the photos in October, and then the following February there was a event called the Dusseldorf Photo Weekend. So it was a big, the whole city basically focuses on photography, and I was invited to show 3 of the 5 pictures from the award, and I went happily along to do that. And then while I was there, met an artist called Julia Zinbauer, who does very interesting work across architecture and performance and textiles and fashion and the sort of and text and then the integration of all of those things that we artistically connected and made an installation together called Spacefall, which involves her performing and me filming and then reprojecting it in the space that we filmed in and so on. And then we kept in touch for the past over 2 years as pen pals. And then one of our great connections is through language and playing with language. And I'd started, at the beginning of lockdown, I started writing nonsense poetry, which is something I've been doing for years and years, on and off.
In English?
In English, yeah. But it's I can read you one if you fancy.
Please.
Some of these poems have become the lyrics for the songs for the band that I have formed with Julia.
Oh, how cool.
A band called Pinhole Computers, and that came about from her trying to describe punch card technology. So this kind of verse. Billy Pickle Wankle Face, he never ever knew his place. Inside his breeks he made a mess of fetid horrid clumsiness. Mrs. Pickle, that's his wife, she hung him up and took a knife.
Stiff spoon patty face, spindling on the wire.
I really love nonsense verse and short verse that sort of, sweeps in and just takes an essence, then it's gone, and you think, what was that?
All right, Matt, thank you again so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for your support.
Monogamous. One pone hole ye may be, but petty. I've seen stiff spoon Todd, and ye